You left the house at the same time you always leave. The same door, the same route to the car, the same moment the engine started, the same direction you pulled out of the driveway. You did not think about any of it. You have done it so many times that the body does it without the mind being fully present. Somewhere on your street, something noticed. Not a neighbor, not a camera. Something that has been watching the pattern of your household for weeks, building a model of your movements so accurate that it could predict, within a window of roughly 20 minutes, when you would be home again. It did not need to follow you. It did not need to know where you were going. It only needed to know when the house would be empty, and it has known that for longer than you realize. Most people think of their daily routine as something private, something that belongs to them, a rhythm that the outside world receives only as a series of disconnected moments, a car leaving, a light going off, a gate closing, not as a pattern, not as information, not as data that something is actively collecting and using. But the reality of what an urban fox learns about the households on its territory is far more specific, far more deliberate, and far more unsettling than most people ever consider. Welcome to Urban Fox Mind. Subscribe before you leave, because what you are about to learn will change the way you think about your own front door. Tonight we are going into the mapping into what the fox in your street has been building, one observation at a time, since the first night it moved through your neighborhood. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover is the detail that most people find hardest to sit with, and the one that reveals the most about the specific relationship forming between this animal and your household. Number 1. The fox did not start with your garden. It started with your street. Before a fox enters a garden, it maps the street. Before it maps the street, it maps the neighborhood. The process is methodical, patient, and begins long before you become aware that anything is watching. Urban foxes, establishing or expanding a territory in a residential area, follow what researchers describe as a systematic assessment protocol, a progressive narrowing of scale, from the large to the small, from the general to the specific. The first passes through a new area are observational. The fox is not foraging yet. It is learning which streets have consistent human activity and which go quiet early, which gardens have dogs and which do not, where the bins are placed and on which nights, where the cats patrol and where they avoid, where the gaps in the fences are, where the ground is soft enough to be worth investigating. Research from the University of Brighton, tracking the territorial establishment behavior of individual urban foxes, found that newly arrived foxes spent an average of 8 to 12 nights in broad reconnaissance before beginning to establish consistent route patterns within a specific area. During this reconnaissance phase, the fox was physically present in the neighborhood, but behaviorally invisible, moving along perimeters, avoiding the center of spaces, making no marks, leaving no evidence. Gathering only. By the time you became aware that there was a fox in your street, the first time you caught a glimpse of it crossing the road at night, or saw it on a neighbor's doorbell camera, the fox had already been there for weeks. The reconnaissance was already complete. The map was already being drawn. Your street was assessed before your garden was assessed. Your household was identified before your routine was studied. You entered the fox's model of your neighborhood long before you ever thought about the fox at all. Number 2. Your routine has a shape, and the fox learned it from the outside. A household routine, observed from the street over several weeks, has a structure that is as readable as a timetable. Not because humans are predictable in the way machines are, but because the ordinary rhythms of a household, the lights, the sounds, the movement of cars, the opening and closing of doors follow patterns that repeat with enough consistency to be modeled. Research on urban fox temporal behavior, published in the journal Urban Ecosystems, found that individual foxes in residential territories demonstrated what the researchers described as household-specific timing adjustments. alterations in route timing, that correlated directly with the behavioral patterns of specific households rather than with broader environmental variables, like temperature or season. The fox was not responding to the night in general. It was responding to specific houses, on specific streets, based on what those houses consistently did at specific times. The signals your household sends into the street are more numerous than you probably consider. The time the first light comes on in the morning, the sound of the shower, audible through a bathroom window left open, the particular noise your car makes when the engine turns over, the moment the kitchen light switches off after dinner, the blue pulse of a television through a curtain, the sound of a dog being let out for the last time. The specific silence that settles over a house when everyone inside has gone to sleep. None of these signals is directed at the fox. All of them are received by it. And across weeks of consistent observation, they assemble into something that functions, for a fox navigating its territory, like a schedule pinned to a board. This house goes dark by 11. This house has movement until 1. This house has a dog that comes out at 10:30 and again at 7. This house is empty between 8 in the morning and 6 in the evening, Monday through Friday, and occupied all day on the weekend. Your routine has a shape. The fox learned that shape from the street. And it is using that shape every single night to decide when and how to move through your neighborhood. Number 3, it knows when you are home and when you are not. This is the specific detail that most people pause at. Not because it is implausible the mechanism is straightforward once you understand how foxes read environmental signals, but because the implication is one that sits differently once you have said it out loud. The fox in your street knows, with reasonable accuracy, when your house is occupied and when it is not. The cues it uses are not sophisticated in the way that human surveillance is sophisticated. They are olfactory, acoustic, and visual, the same 3 channels through which a fox reads everything about its environment. An occupied house smells different from an empty one. The scent of cooking, of bodies, of pets, of the particular mixture of chemicals that accumulates in a space where people live. All of this leaks through gaps around doors and windows at levels far below the threshold of human perception, but well within the fox's olfactory range. An occupied house sounds different. The low-frequency hum of appliances, the vibration of movement on floors, the barely audible acoustic signature of a building in use. Research on red fox sensory capability, published in Mammalian Biology, documented that foxes could reliably detect human presence within enclosed structures at distances of up to 15 meters under normal wind conditions, using olfactory cues alone. The study noted that foxes showed measurably different behavioral responses: closer approach, longer dwell time, more investigative movement near structures confirmed to be unoccupied compared to occupied ones. What this means for your property is direct. On the evenings you stayed late at work, your house told the fox you were gone before you got home. On the mornings you worked from home unexpectedly, your house told the fox you were still there when it expected you to have left. On the nights you went away and a neighbor checked in briefly, the fox registered the difference between a fully occupied house and one that was being visited. It did not know where you were. It did not need to. It only needed to know the one piece of information relevant to its territory management, whether the house was empty enough to approach. Number 4. The map it built includes things about your property that you have never consciously noticed. The model a fox builds of a household over weeks and months of observation is not limited to timing. It is spatial. It includes the physical layout of your property in a level of detail that would surprise you, not because the fox has any interest in your property as such, but because spatial memory is one of the core cognitive tools through which urban foxes manage the complexity of living in a human-built environment. Oxford University's Wildlife Conservation Research Unit, in its long-term study of urban fox cognition, documented that individual foxes maintained detailed spatial maps of their territories that included not just the major features, streets, gardens, parks, but the microgeography of regularly used spaces. The specific gap in a fence, remembered and used for months. The corner of a garden where the ground is consistently softer, revisited for foraging across seasons. The exact route through a property that avoids the motion sensor light while still accessing the area behind the shed. The approach line to the bins that keeps the hedge between the fox and the kitchen window for as long as possible. Your property has features that the fox knows and you have probably never explicitly noticed. The gap you keep meaning to fix. The corner of the garden you rarely go to. The area behind the shed that gets no foot traffic for weeks at a time. The spot near the back fence where the ground is slightly lower and water pools in rain, concentrating the scent of earthworms. The approach to your back door that is screened from your kitchen window by the angle of the extension. These are not features you identified and cataloged. The fox did. It did it systematically, across many visits, with a spatial precision that reflects an animal whose survival in a complex human-built landscape depends on knowing the geography of its territory in detail. The map the fox has of your property is, in certain specific respects, more detailed than yours. Number 5. What the fox does with the map, and what that tells you about how long it has been watching. A map is only as useful as what you do with it. And what an urban fox does with the detailed model it builds of the households in its territory reveals something about the nature of the relationship forming between that animal and the people it has been quietly studying. The fox uses the map to manage risk. Every decision it makes about when to enter your garden, which route to take through it, how long to stay, where to investigate and where to avoid, all of these decisions are made against the background of everything it has observed about your household. The map is not static. It is continuously updated, refined, corrected. When something in your routine changes, the map changes with it. When a new variable appears, a new car, a new pet, a new person, the map expands to incorporate it. But here is the detail that changes how you think about the whole thing. Research on individual fox territorial behavior, tracking the same animals across multiple seasons, found that the most detailed and accurate household models were maintained by foxes that had been present in a territory for the longest time. Not surprising. But the consequence of that finding is specific. The accuracy of the fox's map of your household is a measure of how long it has been watching. A fox with a rough, approximate model of your household, one that knows the broad pattern but not the details, has been present in your territory for weeks. A fox with a precise, updated, spatially detailed model that includes the specific gap in your fence and the exact timing of your last light that fox has been watching for months, possibly longer. The question is not whether a fox has been mapping your routine. In any suburban street with an established fox population, the answer to that question is almost certainly yes. The question is how long. And the answer to that question is written in the precision of its behavior in your garden, in the confidence with which it moves through your space, in the exact routes it takes, and the exact moments it chooses. You can read the map if you know what to look for. The next time you come home after dark and nothing moves in your garden, no rustle, no shape crossing the lawn, nothing, it does not mean the garden is empty. It means the fox knew you were coming before you arrived. It was already gone. The garden that looks exactly as you left it, the gate that seems undisturbed, the corner that shows no sign of anything, all of it is the evidence of an animal that has been paying attention to you long enough to know exactly when to disappear. It knows your street, it knows your house, it knows your schedule. And tonight, when you go to sleep and the lights go off in the sequence they always go off in, it will know that too. Tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed a fox disappearing just as you came outside? Or arriving the moment you went in? A timing that felt too precise to be coincidence? Tell me what happened and when. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next one.